afternoon. Hello, we are happy you're joining us for this ERWC 3.0 update for professional learning leaders. Welcome to this webcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Wicks, coming to you from Central Station U Studio. And we appreciate you filling out the polls on the screen as we get started. We always like to know who's joining us for each webcast that we produce here. And are you joining alone? Are you in a group? And thank you for also sharing your role and your department from your organization or your school. We have more people joining as we speak. So I just want to let you know we look forward to your comments and questions in the open chat pod to the left of the screen throughout today's session. We will have captions typed word for word throughout the session as well, and look forward to your engagement throughout the session via polls and conversation in the chat pod. So with that, I'd like to introduce Nancy Bray-Nelson, and she is the co-director from the CSU Center for the Advancement of Reading and Writing, and she's going to start today's session. I'll hand it over to you, Nancy.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to be with you today, and I would like to introduce the colleagues who will be joining me on this webcast. Jennifer Fletcher, who is Professor of English at CSU Monterey Bay and Chair of the ERWC Steering Committee. Also, we have Deborah Boggs, who is the Director of Language and Literacy at the Stanislaus County Office of Education. She's the statewide lead for our county group that co-sponsors all of our workshops. And lastly, we have Shirley Hargis. She is with the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools. She is the I3 coordinator and the regional lead for Region 7. So this is our merry band of presenters today. We plan to present a number of items, and then you can be asking us questions. The team will be responding to them in the chat box, but at the end we've reserved time to specifically answer your questions and answers. I would like to go to the agenda and talk a bit about what we're doing, and then I'll share the Google folder that we're using. We're really looking at 3.0, what our goals and purposes are. Jennifer will be covering that. Then really how it's structured. Shirley then, I'll talk about that. Shirley will share with you the agenda for the two-day ERWC 3.0 update session. And Christine, I saw you had a question about that. That is the official name. ERWC 3.0 update session. That is the two-day. Then Deborah will go a little more deeply into an important feature, and that is the ERWC with integrated and designated ELD. Lastly, Deborah and I will end today's session with some information about leader certification and next steps, and then we'll take your questions and answers. So right now, before we turn this over to Jennifer, I'd like to share the Google folder so that you can see how that is organized. And, of course, I need to switch that. Sorry about that.
And while you're doing that, I'll just make mention here, Nancy, on the screen underneath your webcam, participants will see the resources pod there, and it's easy just to click on that link, ERWC Resources, the Google folder, and then click on Browse to at the bottom. It'll take you right to the window now that Nancy is showing you on the screen.
We have posted a number of draft documents into this folder that we will be referring to during the webcast. We may not actually look at every one, but these are here for you to go back to and consult. So thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and we will move forward and turn the mic over to Jennifer, who will talk about our goals and purposes.
Hi, folks. So I'm Jennifer Fletcher. I'm going to be talking about the goals and purposes. And as you listen to this overview, we're going to ask you to take note of any keywords or phrases that seem especially significant, and to go ahead and post these in the chat. So this is language that signals what's new and important about the design of the 3rd edition. And you might think of this as the language that you would use to introduce ERWC 3.0 in the sessions that you lead. And do feel free to post questions in the chat as well. So the slide that you're looking at now offers a snapshot of some of the big ideas behind the ERWC redesign. ERWC 3.0 offers teachers and students more choices, more literature, greater diversity of text types and authors, more means of expression using universal design for learning, more support for English language learners. Deborah's going to be talking more about that. And then more opportunities for doing things like analyzing visual rhetoric and new media. And this has been in response to feedback that we have gathered from the community over the years. We're going to be taking a look at the revised key principles in a moment. But for now, I want to direct your attention to that section of the slide that says key concepts. So in this 3rd edition, we're offering not only new modules, but also new ways to teach text rhetorically. We've expanded the ERWC's rhetorical approach to include more attention to concepts like audience and context and genre and purpose. Genre is going to be a word that you hear from us a lot. And also to the process of making rhetorical decisions and taking rhetorical action. We've been more intentional as well about what it means to take an inquiry-based approach. So you're going to hear us talking about the importance of expanding the inquiry space, of fostering rhetorical thinking, and promoting transfer of learning. And you'll see, too, that we've retained key components of ERWC 2.0, like the integration of reading, writing, and oral communication, as well as other core features. So I want to make just a few more points about the key concepts that you'll see enacted in 3.0. And if you haven't had a chance to kind of grab some of that language yet that you could use in your workshops, here's another chance. Attention to context promotes transfer. Attention to purpose promotes agency. And attention to writers' choices promotes rhetorical thinking. So now let's look at the revised key principles. While much of this will look familiar to you, I want to highlight a few changes. ERWC is still about the integration of interactive reading and writing processes. But here's one that has been revised. Number 2, a rhetorical inquiry-based approach that fosters critical thinking and engagement through a relentless focus on text. And we really have worked to open the inquiry space by doing things like avoiding leading questions or telling students what we think a text is saying, for instance. Number 3, we are still focused on materials and themes that engage student interest. Number 4 is brand new, a student-centered approach that emphasizes student agency and metacognition, and that's part of universal design for learning. Number 5, classroom activities designed to model and foster successful practices of fluent readers and writers. 6, research-based methodologies with a consistent relationship between theory and practice. And then notice number 7. So there's our favorite word, flexibility. We're still focusing on built-in flexibility with this revision. Built-in flexibility to allow teachers to support students' development as expert learners. Expert learners is going to be another phrase that you'll hear repeatedly. And flexibility to respond to different instructional contexts. And we now have 8 key principles rather than 7. So finally, alignment with California standards for English language arts and English language development. And overall, the revised key principles are really about supporting students' growth and independence. So another important feature of the redesigned ERWC is heightened attention to learning goals. This is a primary means by which we support students' development as independent readers and writers. When you see the modules, you're going to notice that activities have purpose statements now. There are also new sections in the assignment template on learning goals. As I talk about the learning goals for 3.0, I want to again invite you to notice any language that seems especially important and to post those words in the chat. So 3.0 learning goals include the following: value reading and writing for communication, learning, and pleasure. Read intentionally for a variety of purposes, including to learn content, to understand a variety of perspectives, to critique, and to learn writer's craft. This is one that we had a lot of rich discussion around. Number 3, understand the ways in which reading and writing inform and support each other. 4, understand the ways that different aspects of rhetorical situations, especially audience, purpose, occasion, and genre, influence communicative choices. There's that attention to rhetorical thinking again, and that focus on genre. And then 5, engage in intellectual conversations about important issues. 6, evaluate arguments, again, within an emphasis on rhetorical thinking. 7, write effectively in a variety of academic, civic, and workplace genres. So there's transfer of learning and communicating across contexts. 8, revise writing rhetorically at all levels of meaning. 9, examine and reflect on strategies, processes, tools, and practices for ongoing learning and development. And 10, be inquisitive, motivated, self-directed learners. So in those last few, you're also seeing that extra attention to transfer and agency. So let me take a quick look at the chat here, and I'm seeing reflection, I'm seeing inquisitive, self-directed. So you're picking up on all these important things like independence, reflection, metacognition are really important for transfer of learning. Great, these are at the heart of 3.0. So Nancy Brennelson is going to be talking next on the structure of the new curriculum.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was very helpful. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the way we've restructured things for 3.0. We have different module types. So you'll find that we have portfolio modules that are at the beginning and end of the year. And we've expanded to grade 11, which most of you already knew, but there are portfolio modules for both grades. Then we have mini modules. Those modules accomplish a number of things, and they focus on concepts, strategies, things that lead into longer modules, the full-length modules that you see listed there. We have, and we've always had book modules, but now we have full-length drama, issue modules as usual, and foundational document modules that are just for grade 11. In our pilot, we experimented with having a category called research and ultimately decided not to have that as a separate category, but some modules have a research tag, you'll find. The full-length modules are intended to reinforce concepts or strategies introduced in the mini modules, and the other way around. The mini modules are intended to introduce things that will be further developed. And so part of what happens in professional learning for 3.0 is you as facilitators will be guiding teachers to make module selections. That process is really a fairly deep, an analysis of what each module is accomplishing. So the requirements in terms of a full year are 2 portfolio modules, the beginning and the end, 3 mini modules, and then 5 to 6 full-length modules. That's what we're asking people to do to constitute an entire year of instruction. Now, you see pathways and pairings there. Really what we're looking at are there are various ways to move through all the different modules that we have. And in the Google folder, you're going to see a draft list of the modules to be released in Phase 1 and in Phase 2 or even possibly Phase 3. I'll talk about that in a moment. What teachers will have to consider during professional learning under your guidance, support, with your support, will be the text genres, the culminating tasks, the learning goals, and Jennifer pointed out that those are more and more important, the standards, and of course the number of weeks. And that analysis should help teachers decide whether they have created a year-long curriculum that is comprehensive. There is a sample in the Google folder. We won't be going to that right now, but that is there for you to take a look at. So let's pause for just a minute and ask this question. How do you envision yourself helping teachers construct their year-long course as a part of your workshop? And how much time do you think this process will take? Remember, I'm asking you about 4-day workshops right now. Record your ideas in the chat box. Okay? So you can continue to record those as I look at a couple of other features related to structure of the course. All important to high schools is this course approved as a B course? Right now, you will see that the grade 11 course is posted in the UC Office of the President Course Management Portal. The old grade 12 course is posted, and the new one will be added soon. This year, schools have the option of continuing to implement ERWC 2.0 or moving to 3.0. And what we think some schools will want to do is perhaps add modules from 3.0 to what they've been doing in 2.0. So part of the conversation during professional learning has to be, you know, how are they going to go about implementing this, particularly if they have already been implementing it in grade 12. And then, of course, the conversation is around, should they implement in grade 11? For those of you tracking the changes in placement of students in general education courses and what counts in terms of course taking, only the grade 12 course is considered in GE placement. Now let's think about, or let's shift to the release of modules. A little graphic here is not exactly organized the way the document is in your Google folder, but you get the idea that our first phase is being released in June at our leadership conference. That's where we encourage teachers to come if they want to learn about it. But the modules will be migrated into the site, and they will be visible to anyone who has an account. The reason we chose those modules as phase 1 is they've been taught during our pilot. We have feedback, and the module writers or others in our group have had an opportunity to revise them, and we are finalizing that now. The phase 2, those are modules being taught as we speak that teachers will give us feedback about, and then we will use that feedback to make revisions and then post those. Our target for that is November. Phase 3, question mark. You know, it's possible that a module we thought was going to be ready might not be ready, in which case we'll push it to the next phase. So we would love to say that everything will be ready by November 1st, but as these things go, sometimes they may not be. Now here, let me just orient you to this, and then I'll take you into the site. Right now, the teachers in our 2 grants. We have an I3 grant. It's in California and in Washington. There are 49 schools, 43 in California, 6 in the state of Washington. We also have an NPD grant focusing on teachers of English learners. Those teachers have access to these draft modules through the Projects tab. And not unlike our current modules tab, there is, we've listed have a menu of the different modules with the teacher version, the text, and the student version. But the items you see there in red are new. So every module has an overview. That's a quick way for someone to orient him or herself to a module. There's also a module standards plan, or in the case of the NPD modules, a module plan with integrated and designated ELD. In the old modules, we had standards down the left-hand column, right? Or left, I should say. But now they're too diverse, and we don't have a sort of a common group of standards for every section of the template. Therefore, you will find a separate document that lists the standards. And then if we're making revisions, we will sometimes post what it is we revised when we repost an item. The format's pretty much the same as you would expect. Here's just a little excerpt you see on your screen from a module. We've added purpose statements. We want to make sure that teachers are clear, they could share that with their students. But all the rest of the features of our design are the same. Italics indicate potential student responses. And I'd like to share the screen for a moment and take you into the website. So let's see if I did this properly, which no, I didn't, so that's okay. We will share this. So this is for those of teachers who are permissioned into the I3 and the NPD modules. You see this Projects tab. After today's webcast, those of you who are going to be professional learning leaders in your region will be permissioned. I will go in or my staff will go in and permission that. So you can see the tab there, the pull-down tab for I3 and NPD. I'm just going to go to the grade 12 tab right now. And now you see a long list, a long menu of modules. If you're to go to this, you'll still see some categorized as research, but those will be changed to issue. I'm going to go to Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. We've vastly expanded the number of books. And this is what the page looks like. You'll see the module overview, the teacher version, the texts. If there is one additional essay that accompanies this full-length novel, the student version in PDF and Word, and then some revision comments. So that is what it looks like and what you will encounter. Now, these are not the ones that will be released in June. These are still the drafts that teachers have been working with all year long. So I'm going to stop sharing and go back to where we were and introduce Shirley, who's going to share with you the actual agenda that we're going to be using in the 2-day workshops.
Yes, I am excited to be with you, and I am thrilled for the last couple of years to be full-time with ERWC. So with that said, it is my pleasure today to tell you about the 2-day ERWC 3.0 sessions that we will be able to start as early as May. First of all, you see we have to consider who our audience will be. And our audience for this will be those who are previously certified as ERWC teachers. So those are the ones who have already attended the 4-day introductory session, whether they attended that session this year or whether they attended it 10 years ago. So we will have some folks who've been teaching ERWC regularly and some who are still a little bit new to ERWC, but they have never been acquainted with ERWC 3.0. So that will be our audience. Keep in mind that these sessions are not mandatory, although we really do encourage teachers to go to them because this will be the only way that they will get the professional learning that accompanies ERWC 3.0. Eventually, the modules will be available on the online community, but we do feel that the professional learning is extremely worthwhile. So we definitely would like to see our folks attend to them, and I do believe that there is an audience who is eager to get them. And speaking of eagerness, we move on to when should we start these ERWC 3.0 update sessions. You basically have two general ideas right now that you could start one in spring. You could start one as soon as May if you feel confident that you're ready to do that and if you can get everything aligned and ready to go. And if you started in the spring, we're just asking that you have one day in the spring with day 2 to follow in the fall. If you would rather wait and start it after our summer leadership conference when phase 1 materials have already been rolled out, then you can choose to have 2 days back to back. So 2 days back to back, you could schedule them in July or August or September or whenever you would like. You could even choose to have those 2 days spread out a little bit too, with the idea that the teachers will have a chance to experiment with the curriculum and then come back like they do on our introductory sessions. There are advantages, of course, to having it in the spring. The main advantage I can think of having it in the spring is that people are so eager to get the materials. They're ready for updates. They want to see what is out there. And some of them want to be ready in the fall to teach them. So the only way they're really going to have the opportunity to be ready is if we offer them the option of having something in the spring where they can get their hands on the materials. So that would definitely be an advantage to having it in the spring. Of course, the flip side to that is, as Nancy said, those phase 1 materials won't be available until after our leadership session, and then the phase 2 materials won't be available until the fall. So when our participants come in May or even in June to one of those 2-day sessions, we will need to have a Google file with all the modules that we want to make available to them for the workshop, or a Padlet, or some way of handing them out. So that moves us on to the idea of what are we going to do about a binder, or are we going to provide handouts? So if you choose to begin in the spring, obviously if you're going to start something in May or June, you will be using some type of a handout system. By waiting, you could have a binder, and we are planning to come up with a binder that we'll be using in our introductory sessions. However, you can probably imagine that the binder will no longer exist as it has in the past. Knowing that we have so many choices for the teachers, there would not be feasible, at least, for us to have a binder with all of the materials. So things that will be changing about that binder is more than likely we will have a 2-inch binder, and that 2-inch binder will have all of the introductory materials we need and then some sample modules that we'll be using in our workshop, but it will not have everything. Nancy showed you our online, which you're aware of what we have right now. And in this day and age, we are encouraging people to use more online, so they will be accessing the materials online for the new materials and for our workshops. So more and more of that will be happening. So keep that in mind. The best news, of course, is the cost. We'll be continuing to offer our 4-day introductory workshops as we have in the past through our MOU, and we'll be able to balance those with a 2-day. So you will not have to charge anything for your participants to attend the 2-day ERWC sessions. What you will need to do as a workshop facilitator or your regional lead will work together with you to determine how you're best going to make that work, which more than likely you'll have a balance depending on the needs of your region. You may decide to have, when in the past you would have had 2 or 3 introductory workshops, and maybe you will only have 1 introductory workshop, and then you will have 2 or 3 of the ERWC 3.0 updates, because that's whatever balance your people need is what you want to do. So with that in mind, I know that you are very eager to kind of get an idea, a jump start, especially if you're eager enough to want to start this in May. So you want to look at what we have available for the ERWC 3.0 update agenda. And in the file that we won't go to there now, but we have an overview, and we have the overview set up with 2 different ways of looking at it. One is if you do start in May with your 2nd day in fall, and then there will be some slight adjustments if you wait until the summer or the fall to start. So we have 2 suggestions And the way we've written the suggestion for the fall is if you are going to have them back to back. But as I said earlier, of course, you're going to take that and you're going to do what is best for your area and your region. So you might decide to spread them out and have a couple of months in between them anyway. And you're going to look at that update or the overview that would give you some ideas, and you're going to tweak it to fit the needs of your participants. I also have a sample agenda in there. In Region 7, we are going to start the ERWC 3.0 updates in May. We have a few of them scheduled, with the first one being May 1st. So if you want to start one in the spring, or even if you decide to do it later, we would be very glad to share with you the PowerPoints that we develop when they are ready. So just let me know if you need that. So what will we be doing during these 2-day ERWC 3.0 updates? I see that your chat box discussions have talked about what you would do as far as course structure and planning the course in the 4-day. And we have to consider that for those who are returning, knowing they're already certified, they already know ERWC, but there's so much new to look at and so much new to learn. I saw that someone said maybe they'll need a whole day of planning, and yes, that would be ideal. So when we look at the 2-day ERWC 3.0 updates, we want to make certain that we are allowing a lot of planning time. And we want to make that very structured planning time so that they are really preparing, and we want to trust our teachers. So the one thing that we want to look at first of all are the goals and the purposes. We want to make certain that those are clear. One of those will be starting with a question for the teachers. And one thing that we've thought about, and we have used this in the ERWC I3 grant also, is to ask the question, to start where the teachers are, what is an effective ERWC classroom? So if the teachers are thinking about an effective ERWC classroom, they're reflecting on what they have been doing. And then that allows us to come in with some of our new things that have been changed a little bit. We can look at our goals and our purposes and introduce the key concepts and continue to add to the idea of what is an effective ERWC classroom, honoring what teachers have done in the past, and then encouraging them to look at what is new. And then we want to, of course, introduce the structure of 3.0, give the teachers an opportunity to wrap their heads around the changes that exist in the structure of the course. So that's going to be a challenge that we'll want to make certain that they have time for. And as we've done in our 4 days, we want to maybe not model an ERWC module, but at least introduce them to it. In this case, we want to introduce them to a mini module. And we've chosen as one that would be great to start out with in the 2-day sessions, introducing the rhetorical situation. This would accomplish 2 things. It would introduce the teachers to the idea of a mini module and what it's supposed to accomplish. And then it would also help us to look at what they know about the rhetorical situation. Some of you will find this module somewhat familiar. Nelson Graff wrote it, and he did use in it our Flavia Bipkin story that some of you may remember from day 3 or from past ERWC leadership conferences. So I think you'll enjoy the module. Again, remember the mini module is designed to last 2 or 3 days, maybe up to a week, but just to introduce a concept that then when we move on to the full-length module, we'll see how that concept is developed so we can give our students something up front that might help them be prepared for it when they see it in the module. So in the 2-day session that begins in May, we will be introducing the rhetorical situation, and then we could move on to juvenile justice. In May, we're thinking that we will not have time in 1 day to introduce all of our new concepts and everything that we have new, have the teachers have a chance to do some planning and look into the full-length module with all the different pieces of that. So that particular module, we are suggesting that if you start in summer or fall, you use it. If you start in May, the idea that I have and what's reflected in our module is that you choose, again, you want to know your audience. So if you have a teacher from 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, several teachers from those grade levels in your workshops, then you'll want something that's meaningful to them. So you will want to provide a phase 1, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade module, and have the teachers work in groups, not to get to know the module thoroughly, but at least to have an opportunity to look at a full-length module before they get their themselves busy planning, which is what they're going to be wanting to do. So for example, you could choose a 9th grade module, Good Food, Bad Food, right? It's no longer in 12th grade. So Good Food, Bad Food is now a 9th grade module. So that's one that you could choose for that. In 10th grade, you could possibly look at Age of Responsibility, which is one we're familiar with in 10th grade, but it has been revised, it has been changed. In 11th grade, my suggestion is perhaps the Big Breakup, which will give us an idea of the foundational documents and a module that's based around that and based around the Declaration of Independence. And then in 12th grade, you could use Juvenile Justice, or you could save it for day 2 and use the Daily Me, which is one of our more popular issue modules. So again, there will be some planning to be done. We'll pave the way in Region 7 by seeing what happens in May, and we'll be glad to share the results with you. Another thing that we would suggest that you do during this 2-day is to spend some time looking at essential pedagogies for ERWC with integrated and designated ELD. And in a few minutes, Deborah Boggs is going to tell us a little bit more about the changes there. But just to give you an idea of something you might do in day 1 or in day 2, and I think we're going to work it into day 1, is you might have some jigsawing with some expert groups. And you might look at the essential pedagogies as one piece. You might look at the success criteria, transferring engagement, and universal design for learning, which is also something that we have incorporated more directly into ERWC than we have in the past. So again, you will have flexibility of planning your agendas the way you like, but our goal is that you come away from today having a pretty good idea of what would go into those 2 days. Then, of course, comes the course construction. And this will be essential for 2 days. And if your days are spread out, you're having one in May, with the idea that teachers may start school either ready to teach ERWC 3.0 totally, or an 11th grade teacher may be starting a whole new adopted course in 11th grade on ERWC, and they're completely new to it. They're going to have to become familiar with the course construction. Now, there are some leeways, I guess I would say, with the way the adoption happens. Some of our 12th grade schools will choose to teach ERWC 2.0 next year, either because they know they're not ready for the change or just because it's going to be such a huge change. I would think that anyone who can get their hands on the new materials and can have any type of experience will want to change some things. So they may come to your workshop in May, or as soon as you can have it in the summer, and they may decide that I'm going to go back and I'm going to teach one mini module in the fall and one full-length module from 3.0, and then I'll pick up on what I've done from 2.0. Then I'll make my total change in the year of 2021. That is an option in 12th grade. And of course, in 9th through 12th grade, 9th through 11th, if they're not in an adopted course, they can choose to supplement with ERWC either the 2.0 or the 3.0, wherever, however they would like. You probably do realize that I'm calling 2.0 what we used to call the 2nd edition, so keep that in mind. So anyway, however you decide to roll out your 2-day workshops, we want to support you however we can, and we want to make certain that, as you have already identified, you'll be using lots of implementation planning time. I do see some ideas in the chat box that we may be dealing with a little bit more later too. So at this time, though, I think I have a question for you. Whoops, sorry. Okay, what support will you need as a facilitator of the 2-day ERWC 3.0 update? So think about that. Think about what we can do. Again, you can see what is in the Google Drive for you right now, and you can see what else you will need. And we would be glad to help you however we can to roll this out. And we, of course, are looking forward to seeing you at the Leadership Conference in June. I believe we may have a survey too, but I'm not 100% certain about that. So we had a few survey questions that may be coming up for you. So at this time, as you're considering that, it's my pleasure to go ahead and introduce to you Deborah Boggs, who is the Director of Language and Literacy in Stanislaus County, and also our ERWC statewide lead. So Deborah will take it from here, and she will tell us about the English language development. Thank you, Deborah.
Good afternoon, everybody, and please do put those ideas in the chat box. I just want to go back to Shirley's question. What support will you need as a facilitator? I saw somebody say something about support materials for publication. record all those ideas so we can get them down and support you in the best way we can. I'm going to talk about ERWC with integrated and designated, and I'm super excited for the new things that we have planned under the National Professional Development Grant. So this is a series of modules. It's not the full I3 11th and 12th grade course, but we have 4 modules or several modules at every grade level, 9, 10, 11, and 12, that are designed to be taught in 2 parallel classrooms. We really thought long and hard about how we were going to implement the integrated and designated. And so this is designed to be collaboratively taught by a core English teacher working with a designated ELD teacher. There is some guidance for thinking about, if you don't have that gold standard of instruction for our language learners, how a single teacher might teach, make decisions about both courses in order to teach it in a single class. But there is support for teachers in collaboration around working together, and then separate student versions so that each teacher can quickly locate the activities that they're going to be implementing in their classrooms. When we think about the modules that we have, the 11th and 12th grade modules are part of the 11th and 12th grade course options. So these are embedded within the I3 materials. And so you can see there are choices that teachers could make when they're building their course outline that would completely have that support for the language learners. Those modules are here. You can see the 11th grade is all new. Human impact on climate change, Chance Me, Changing Minds on Immigration, The Distance Between Us, that's a novel one. These are all brand new modules that were written from the ground up to include both courses. In 12th grade, you have 2 modules that were reconfigured to have support for language learners. That's Juvenile Justice and the Politics of Food, and then other modules that, again, were brand new. On Leaving and On Staying Behind is one that's focused on poetry. Cambodia Remembers is actually one that is having students engage in literature circles for some self-directed work. Then when we go to 9th and 10th grade, obviously these are like the modules that we had before for students, but these modules are all, again, built out with the full support for language learners in the integrated, in the core English class, and designated in the ELD class. And again, we have a couple that were reconfigured. You see Good Food, Bad Food was revamped and revised, as was Age of Responsibility. But then again, some more all new modules that provide that support for students. And stuff that we found, we really had a focus on what students would find engaging, particularly students who have been long-term language learners, to get them really fired up and excited about doing rigorous instructional work that ERWC requires, and then supporting the language development that they need in order to make that happen. So here's an example I want to provide you an example activity. So from Human Impact on Climate Change, you can see it's an 11th grade, second semester module. Introduces multiple informational texts, focuses on Obama's speech at the Paris Climate Summit. And then the culminating activity is for students to research a policy, and then they're going to write an argumentative letter to an elected official. So that's some of what would be on a module overview page that you'd see here. And then here would be an activity that would be part of the core English class. Very familiar as students are looking at appeals of credibility, trying to find the appeals within the speech that they are reading in their English class. So that would be in the regular class, and then in the ELD class, we'd have a designated ELD activity that's building into and from content. So you see we are going back into that text, and now we're looking at specific language features. So in this case, markers of cohesion, looking at lexical chains and referencing. So having students really doing a little bit deeper dive into the text that they're reading and thinking about the language features and really giving them more support there. One of the things that you'll find as a teacher in looking at the teacher version is that all of the designated activity boxes are double boxed so that you can differentiate them very easily from what happens in the core class. Plus, we've added the D for designated. So you have activity 16 might happen in the regular classroom, and then 16D is going to happen in the designated classroom. So there's a couple of ways in the teacher version that you can differentiate. And then in the student version, again, those are separate documents, so very easily differentiated for you. Thinking about essential pedagogies. Okay, so this is a document some of you may be familiar with that I've used in my workshops for teachers, but it's really some work that Robbie Ching did thinking about when we're supporting our language learners, what are the teaching moves that are really essential to supporting our language learners in the classroom. So this is a document that's, I think, really valuable for you to make use of in your workshops. It has things that you need to consider as you're planning before teaching, things that you need to consider during teaching, and then ways that you can reflect after teaching in order to build your next instructional module to really support your students. One new feature that we are creating to go along with this essential pedagogies is a matrix of key activities so that you will have examples of each different kinds of activities that really support language learning for every grade level that you can turn to and find additional supporting activities. So if you're working with, I don't know what just happened. Oh, I think Nancy's going to show you with this matrix. Okay, so that when you're working with language
Hi,
learners.
Deborah. This is Nancy. I'm sharing on the screen the matrix.
Thank you.
So that people can actually see a little bit of what it's going to look like.
Excellent.
And you'll find that it'll be an index of the different ELD activities and then this is just an excerpt. It's in your Google folder, but then here's a protocol for how to do it. I don't know what else you might want to say about that, Deborah.
This is a work in progress that we are just now getting together. So it's been very eye-opening for us to go back through our modules and just think about where have we placed that support. And I know personally I'm in the phase 2 for revision, and so I'm going to be really taking this into consideration as we revise our module for phase 2. But again, it's going to have some great resources for you, especially thinking about I've got language learners and not all of the modules have the same levels of support, so maybe I can borrow some activities from other modules that will help me to support my language learners, say if I'm doing a module that doesn't have the designated supports. This is going to require a lot of negotiations in thinking about how that's going to be instructed, how you might make use of these. What we've been finding through the pilot year is that there are many, many different ways that schools are choosing to support language learners. And so really trying to think about, again, when you're creating your professional learning for next year, how can you help teachers to understand the needs of their language learners, to think about the value, to think about, again, even recruiting our ELD teachers to attend ERWC workshops because many of them have never had ERWC training. So that's a brand new audience for many of us to bring ELD teachers into this work. And then thinking about how can we support their collaboration together as they work through modules and think about, pacing and, time to talk about how kids are doing and formative assessment strategies in terms of getting to work. So I have a poll question for you, and that's going to be placed out there for you. how confident do you feel in your ability to support teachers through professional learning to implement language development activities out there? So I'm seeing yes, and some with professional learning and support. So that's very good to know, because we really want to make sure, as we're planning our Summer Leadership Institute, that we are providing opportunities for you to get that additional professional learning and support in that summer leadership, so that you'll feel more prepared and ready to go when it comes time to rolling out both your 3.0 updates and your full brand new teacher 4-day trainings. Okay, seems like a lot of you feel pretty good to go, so that's making me feel more confident. Yeah, I see Callie's point in the chat box about a need for a lot of modeling with the ELD support of the materials. I completely agree. And so that's something as professional learning leaders we're going to have to think about. How are we modeling that? Again, that's part of that decision to use juvenile justice, because we know it has such great activities written by the great Robbie Ching, who is such an expert on all things language. So yeah, we're super excited about that. Okay, so now I guess we're moving on to our next section, where we're going to talk about professional learning and next steps. Nancy's going to join me on this, but I'm going to take the first slide. Our leadership conference is coming up, and we need to make plans for that. So first off, if you haven't yet, make sure you are registered for the 2-day event, whether it's in Sacramento or Costa Mesa. Make your hotel reservations. Don't wait on that, because you want to make sure and get the good price. And then, you know, spend some time between now and then looking through all those materials, now that you're going to get permissioned by the end of today, hopefully, or early in the next couple of days, to see those materials in the online community. Take some time to really delve in and look around, and come with your questions. You know, you can always reach out to me for questions on the ELD materials, but then, you know, come to that workshop ready to learn. So very excited to see you there. And Nancy, the next slide is yours.
So our next steps for getting ready to conduct professional learning this coming year, you can see why we wanted to have this webcast. There's a lot of material to absorb. And that's why we want those of you who are going to be conducting workshops to be permissioned into the site and have a chance to start looking at modules and all of these activities. There are a number of documents in all of the Google folders that we shared with you, and we placed the entire Good Food, Bad Food module that is now in grade 9 into the ELD folder for you to take a look at. So that's something you can access right away. Key thing here is your online community account needs to be active. If we can't find you, even though you are on the list to be a leader and you attended today, then we can't permission you. So that's the first thing you need to check. Then look at the projects tab in the online community. Review the modules. Right now, that's what's available. The more general documents, like the learning goals, the key principles, the document on universal design for learning, those things are going to be placed in a general section, but we haven't done that yet. And really importantly, you're going to need to plan with your team about what offerings you'll have, how many 2-day sessions, how many 4-day sessions. What is the demand for the new curriculum in your area? Are people going to be doing 2.0, 3.0, or some mix of the two in grade 12? Is there going to be any desire to do grade 11? There were some questions about the website, and I just wanted to share with you that our plan is, if you look at the website now, we have a module tab. It's about the second one in on that bar. And that's all of our 2.0 modules. So what I'm asking for from our web team is a tab that'll say Modules 2.0, modules 3.0. And June, maybe 16th in the middle of the night, we'll be migrating those 3.0 revised modules into that tab so that anyone who has an account will be able to see them, will be able to use them. We will keep the draft modules, as I talked about before, for phase 2, maybe phase 3, under the projects tab until we're ready to quote unquote publish them. May attendees are really not going to have everything. They're going to have a few modules that we can provide them access to, but they're not going to be permissioned into everything just, well, they won't be. They're going to need to wait until June. So Shirley and I have been talking about ways to do that, putting more modules into a Google folder, etc. So that's coming up. I think what we wanted to do now is to invite all the presenters to weigh in on questions that we have, lots of them in the chat box. So Jennifer, I don't know if there are some that you'd like to highlight for us to address first off.
Sure, and I know a lot of these questions that came in, several of them anyway, were answered by Shirley and Jennifer and Deborah during the session. So let's take a look. I know one question that did come in as well was whether this was being recorded today and whether the session would be available, the recorded version, for everyone to view, and yes, it sure will be. I will make sure that Nancy has the recording link and has the ability to send that out as a follow-up, or however you'd like to make that available, Nancy. Okay, so let's see here.
I can answer Amy's question about middle school modules. Simple answer is no, not right now. It's kind of a heavy lift to revise these modules, and really more, if you looked at the list in the Google folder, we've created so many brand new modules that we haven't been able to pay attention to middle school. So we're sorry about that.
Okay, well, thanks for that. And we do have another question from Lydia. Are there ERWC options for independent study programs?
We have a number of independent study programs using ERWC. They've, for the most part, have made their own adaptations for students whom they're meeting with on, let's say, a weekly basis, and then students are doing a lot of work on their own. So we don't have specific modules or specific modifications. Those have been done by individual teachers. However, we will feature in our leadership conference options for Google Classroom, and we are working toward a hybrid option, but that's not going to be available immediately.
And a question came in as a follow-up as well regarding middle school modules.
Yes, we are not going to take away the middle school modules. We will leave them there. And in fact, all of the modules, unless they've been revised, will be in the archive portion of the website. And so if there's one that's near and dear to your heart, like, river rights, then you will be able to find that under the archives.
Okay, great. And someone just asked for the link to the Google Doc folder, the Google folder, I should say. So I will go ahead and bring that onto the screen in the top right so you can see that easily. And you just click on the name itself, ERWC Resources, and then you can click Browse to at the bottom of that pod. Okay, excellent. There was another question that I captured here that came up, it was a little higher up in the questions. Let's just go right back up here. And let's see, a lot of action here today in the chat pod, so we appreciate that.
I'm thinking maybe, Shirley, you could address Shar's question.
I'm looking for that question.
Will the focus of the 4-day training still be primarily 12th grade training? Is that the one?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a party line for the focus on the 4-day training?
Okay, it might shift slightly. Even in the past, we have focused on the 12th, but kept in mind our 9th through 11th grade audience, always considering who our audience is. The way it will shift is that we will also need to consider the 11th grade who have now adopted the course. So I would say the slight shift there.
Go ahead.
I'd also add that we will be sure to spend more time on ELD than we ever have before. And, that's grades 9 and 10 as well as 11 and 12. Just because it's a module with ELD doesn't mean it's not a regular part of the curriculum, and teachers have the option to use the various sections of those modules.
Nancy,
Okay,
somebody
you.
had asked about suggested pathways.
We do have one suggested pathway in the folder for the structure of ERWC 3.0. And Jennifer, maybe you could talk a bit about what we hope to offer. In the way of pathways and pairings.
Sure. So we're hoping to offer several example pathways and maybe not perhaps recommended pathways, but it will still be up to teachers who are the ones working directly with their students. They know their students' needs and interests. They're working in their local context. So we really do want this to be kind of a co-designed curriculum. So we want to give possible options that might be organized around themes or around skills. We've talked about the possibility of having like a newcomer pathway. So if you need almost like that quick start guide, something that works for a teacher who might be newer to rhetorical theory and practice, or even just newer to teaching, a workable pathway for that teaching situation. So, this is something that I'm sure as, 3.0 hits the ground, we'll have lots of exciting models to share, and we're going to see, all kinds of configurations of the course that we didn't imagine that also work really well for students.
Okay, great. We have another comment here. This came from Brooke. I have an ELD teacher who wanted to use the full ERWC curriculum in her designated ELD workshop. I'm assuming there are not enough designated ELD activities right now to fill the entire workshop class.
That one, I think it really depends on what you're doing in your other classrooms. So, I mean, right now, if you're teaching in 9th grade and 10th grade and 11th grade in 2 classrooms, the designated and integrated, then no. And again, you could look to that matrix and other ways that you could create more support for other ERWC modules. However, if those teachers are not teaching the 9th or 10th grade ELD or ELA in the core class and you just did them in the ELD course, it might be more of a full course of study. So I think there's really not one answer to that question. It just depends a lot on how your schools are structuring their ERWC work and how many teachers are actually utilizing the modules.
I'd like to talk about, answer Kiana's question as well as one that came in previously about costs and how many schools might be interested in grade 11. I think schools might be a little nervous. Grade 11 is the year when testing is done. And so we really don't know at this point how many are going to be interested, but we have had school districts contact us saying that they plan to do it. The costs, I think one of the things that schools need to do early on is think about what books they are going to be using in the curriculum, which full-length drama. That will have an impact on costs. And then, of course, the readings themselves. But it's no different really than what the cost of implementing the course has been for the last few years in grade 12, except I think Shirley pointed out, or another presenter, that the readers that we eventually, it'll be an on-demand print system, because you're going to need to say we're doing these modules, might be a little more costly than the $9.25 that we've been offering for many, many years. And then one last thing is the main idea for people to learn how to select modules because the whole team won't be together. Yes, although if people are coming to a refresher session, I think we'd all recommend that as many members of a department attend together, because that intellectual work of looking at the learning goals and the standards and the genres and the culminating tasks and starting to put that puzzle together is one that takes quite a bit of time and needs everyone kind of in the room.
I might add on the 11th grade, I'm glad to see Richard Heilemann's comment that his school is going to be all in. And then also we have the 43 schools across the state of California and the 6 in Washington who are piloting 11th grade this year and will be teaching the class next year. Once we get our I3 results back, we will be able to say with confidence or not whether or not that's affected the CAS scores, because some 11th graders are concerned about the CAS scores. In our opinion, ERWC will prepare the students for the CASP.
A question about funding. LCAP funds, absolutely. Books have always been purchased unless the school happens to be lucky enough to be in an I3 grant. Some of them consider themselves quite lucky. Others are, working hard at it. They've been given money to buy books. But everyone else, like the curriculum has always been, whatever local sources of funding are available to buy the books, that's what they will use, and districts are pretty creative about that. When will you receive permission for the projects tab? You should already have your online community. You would have established that when you were certified as an ERWC teacher, and so with that account, then of course we can permission you, and that'll take us a couple of days, but we will do that just as quickly as we can.
Great. Of course, I wanted to remind everyone there is the pod at the right side of the screen asking for your feedback. Was this webcast helpful? We would love to know. I see that there are people that still have questions, so we are definitely keeping this open until 4:45. So we have just under 10 minutes left for this Q&A. So please do type in your questions, your comments. And there's one from Maria there asking, do you have a flyer or a one-page around the 2-day refresher?
I would be glad to share the flyer that we created for Region 7. So I can either put it in this resource folder or I could email it to someone directly.
Okay, perfect. If you'd like to upload it there onto the screen, we can put it there in the upload file. Let's see, I think as a presenter you may have access to do that, yes. And then also in the Google folder.
Since I'm working remotely, I'll probably need to do that after the session. I can do it right after.
Perfect. Okay, and Cal Poly Pomona EAP is asking, when will the course descriptions be available for 3.0?
Course description for grade 11 is available now. However, we do need to adjust it a bit, given some of the changes we've made in terms of the number of modules to be taught and different categories like research. And then the 12th grade will be ready shortly thereafter. So I would say it's certainly by the end of the month.
And Char is asking, oh, I'm sorry, did you want to add to that? Okay, maybe not. Char has a question here. Can a district request that the 2-day refresher occur within their district for all their ERWC teachers?
I'm going to give you the standard state line. That's a local decision. You know, your regional lead, your EAP coordinators are really critical in helping to plan, determining what the demand is in your locale. They have a limited budget, and so you want to have, you know, maximize the number of teachers attending, but there are all kinds of things that can be worked out. And I know that down in your area, Shar, Faye Wong is very good at doing that, so I would definitely contact her and see what can be done. But I don't make any promises for regions. They create their own schedules.
Let's see. Marilyn typed in, will there be support at the district level for grade 12 course sequence in districts that implement a common curriculum? Teachers do not map their own course, as an example.
Okay, I'm going to provide an answer and then invite Jennifer to add on. I would say that our suggested pathways or sample pathways would be the support for that. But, you know, we want to encourage school districts and schools to sit down together and really look at how things fit.
I would just add that, you know, we can do things with ERWC 3.0 that we couldn't do with 2.0. And so, you know, having the wealth of resources that we now have to really design curriculum that is going to be, you know, responsive to local context in powerful ways. You know, I would strongly encourage districts and teachers and communities of practice to think strategically about the course design opportunities that are available with the third edition.
Respond to Leanne.
Sure.
Leanne, again, that is a local decision. I would suggest that you meet with your team members about that and make sure you know, come up with your common agenda but you're right in that, and I am going to tag on to what Jennifer said. Doing that intensive work at looking at all those resources and trying on how a full-length module builds on a mini module is going to be really important, and it's not something that's going to necessarily happen in the space of a day.
And Char is inquiring if there will be support materials that will help districts or sites to link the ERWC 11 and 12th grade sequences, sort of a, quote, best approach to pacing with the 2-year program.
I will confess that in the middle of the night I wake up and think, I sure hope the 11th grade and 12th grade teachers talk to one another and do this planning, this year-long construction, because it's going to be important that the standards are 2 years of standards in ELA, ELD for a reason. You can't do it all in a year. And so, yes, I think we need to have some sample pathways that build 11th on to 12th. We don't have all that quite yet. And frankly, you all are going to do some things that we'll share with others. And we're hoping that a lot of our pilot schools will have done that. But that you've really hit the nail on the head there. I think that's a very good point.
And Char's follow-up comment, question, and can sites opt to mix the ERWC 11 and 12th grade modules as they see fit? In other words, 11th grade modules in 12th, etc.
I can't give you an official answer to that. You know why I'm hedging, don't you? Because, you know, we submit a course description to UC, Office of the President, they approve it for a particular grade, and so that's kind of what we're left with. But I dare say that some things are going to fit better in 11th than they do in 12th. I think the module writers have been very, very thoughtful about the modules and the activities and how they'll fit with a particular grade, but we have a lot to learn.
Well, we are coming to the end of our webcast today. I was going to say the end of the hour, but it's actually been over an hour that we've allotted time for today, which is great. Final question here that we can take as we wrap. Char is asking, will you have a party line for switching modules between 11 and 12 by our first refresher course? You're making everyone smile, Char. All right.
We'll work on that.
Well, as we wrap, I want to send it over to you, Nancy, and the team here, Jennifer, Shirley, and Deborah, and see if you have any final closing comments as we start to wrap here.
Just thank you for being here today, all of you. You're critical in making this happen out in school districts, and I can't thank enough the members of the steering committee. You're seeing 3 very hardworking people here, and there are other hardworking people both attending this webcast who have written modules, who are part of all of what we do. This is homegrown. This is not a publisher with highly paid curriculum writers. This is something special that only happens here, and we're proud of it, and we're going to be happy to roll it out. Others? Jennifer, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, I just want to thank you all, and you know, it's the professional development leaders and classroom teachers and our, you know, our multi-state community that's going to bring this curriculum to life. So we're so grateful for you all kind of keeping us focused on doing right by students. Thank you.
All right, great. Well, we want to again thank our team of presenters today, Nancy Bray Nelson, Jennifer Fletcher, Shirley Hargis, and Deborah Boggs for joining us for this excellent training and discussion. So please keep the comments coming in the chat pod for our presenters and questions. And we'll go ahead and wrap today's session and look forward to seeing you on the next webcast right here from the Office of the Chancellor. Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.